Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of this podcast. I have one of my favorite people here with me today. Honestly, couldn't think of a better person to do this first episode with. My friend and photographer, Caroline Morris. Say hi, Caroline.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Hi. Sorry, first time ever being on a podcast. First off, thank you so much, Mike, for having me. This is like truly such an honor. Just being able to, you know, talk with you today, and thank you for creating such a safe place to, talk about all things wedding and life and just everything. And I'm just so excited to chat with you. This is so fun.
Yeah. So, to give a little backstory, so the idea behind this podcast kind of came. It's been like a seed of an idea for a long time, and it kind of stems from this idea that you know we as wedding photographers, wedding vendors, we meet and work with a lot of people, and typically the wedding days are very fast paced, and they're very can be very like emotionally charged in good and bad ways, and um, I feel like that kind of you develop like a camaraderie with the people that you work with because you're all kind of in these like highly emotionally charged situations, and it's amazing what we do. We get to serve our clients and on like one of the most important days of their life, and but what winds up happening is you form these bonds with all these people, photographers, planners, vendors, DJs, whoever, and like you go home and I feel like I don't really get to know who these people are. So
Yeah.
ironically, Caroline, I've known you for a very long time. I actually do know a lot about your life, but
Yes.
um, I think it's cool that we get to talk, about certain things and kind of put it out there for the universe to hear, put it out for the world to hear. Other wedding vendors might hear this and relate to something. Maybe potential clients, they just want to get to know who we are a little bit more outside of like the wedding space.
Mhm.
Um, so, when I mentioned this to you, I really only had you prepare for like one question, and that was pretty much like what was, your path to like wedding photography. So, and then we can kind of like go off on whatever tangents we want. But um,
Totally.
I'm gonna have you start there, and so kind of like, you know, late high school, college, like where did you see yourself? Like what did you think was going to be your life path versus like, and I don't like life path. That's kind of like too charged of a term. Like what did you see yourself doing in those
Yeah.
years, like after high school and in college?
Yeah. Well, great question. And I'm just so honored to be here. Can't say that enough. So yeah, well, my name's Caroline, obviously. I'm based out of Pennsylvania. So I've been a full-time wedding photographer for over 10 years, shot hundreds of weddings at this point, and it has been like the biggest blessing of my life. But I had no idea that the universe wanted me on this path. That was never my intention to own a business and be my own boss and just go on this path. So when I was in high school, or actually late middle school, I suffered a lot of loss in my life, and I didn't really know like where to put all of my feelings and emotions, and I felt really isolated at the time. And amongst all of my like AP psychology classes in high school, my family was like, hey, you should take a class like just for fun to have like a creative outlet, that isn't like super serious. So I took a like traditional like dark room photography class, and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the whole process of developing film and going out and just photographing and capturing anything and everything.
So you had like right from that moment, like you felt a connection
Yes.
to
Yeah.
photography. Okay, interesting.
Yes. I felt an immediate connection. I couldn't I couldn't really put my finger on it at the time, but now reflecting back, in my mid 30s, I'm like, oh wow, like there was definitely something there that was drawing me in. So for me, it was a way to like express how I was feeling, not through words. And yeah, so I just like really like leaned into that. I barely graduated high school because it was really the only class that I like really put effort towards. I'm sorry, my family doesn't really know that. So sorry, guys. Um,
Wait, were
but
you like partying too, or was it
no,
like
no, 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 no,
okay?
no. I just like was so like obsessed with taking photos and
Mm.
just didn't really care about anything else, like history, math, science, could care less. So yeah, there was definitely a sign there, right? And then I kind of had, a moment where I was like, ooh, I don't really know what I want to do after college or after high school, excuse me. So I went to art school for 1 year. I went to Parsons, the New School for Design, which was really cool. So I lived in New York City. It was the most expensive year of my life, and don't regret it at all, but it was very eye-opening. And then I transferred to Temple. So I'm a Philly girl, through and through. Go Eagles. And sorry, Mike.
I don't care.
You're like, I don't really care about sports. So anyway, I always had this inkling that I wanted to work with people, and I didn't really know like in what capacity. So as I mentioned, a few moments ago, like I suffered a lot of loss, in my adolescent years, and was actively in therapy and counseling. And I can really say that that is the reason why I am sitting here today. I owe a lot of my life towards, leaning into, the importance of mental health. So I really thought, hey, maybe I should be a therapist. Like I've always enjoyed talking to people, making people feel comfortable, safe, and seen, so they can tell me their story and just like offer advice and things like that. So I got my degree in psychology, and then I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I was freaking out because I was 22 and just graduated with all of the student loan debt. And I was like, ooh, this just doesn't feel right anymore. And
Mm.
I was waitressing, I was trying to, pay the bills that way. And yeah, I was just like photographing friends and family here and there. And then a girl that I went to high school with messaged me on Facebook and was like, hey, Caroline, I remember like you were the girl with the camera in high school. Can you photograph my wedding? And I was like, I've never done this before, but sure. Fake it till you make it, baby. And that was like my mantra for the next few years of my business. And I just fell in love with photographing people and weddings specifically.
Mm.
So I went home after that wedding. Again, I had no idea what I was doing. Like it was horrible. So sorry to that specific bride. But yeah, so then I went home and I Googled like how do I start a business in Pennsylvania? And I just kind of like did it
Mm.
and didn't really care what friends or family thought. And I was just photographing anything and everything that I could get my hands on, just trying to learn as much as I could. And then that was also like the beginning of social media, right? It was when
Right.
Instagram was just starting with all those fun like sepia filters, like oh my,
Yes.
like so millennial, so
Yeah.
chuggy. It was so great. So
So
yeah,
wait, can I pause you for a second there?
yeah,
So I want to like segue into something else. So around this time, I'm actually curious like where this kind of fits in with your timeline. So we met at a bridal expo, right?
yep.
I was one of my wife's good friends, Megan. Shout out Megan.
Shout out Megan.
Was getting married, and she was looking for you know photographers and that sort of thing. And my wife was like, "Why don't you come along?" And like I was kind of like starting to dip my toe into like maybe I might want to do wedding photography as well. And my wife was like, "Why don't you come along and like see what some of the other photographers there are like up to? Maybe network a little bit." So that's where I first met you. But I also want to hear this story because we've talked about this a little bit, but I don't know that I've heard it from your perspective. So like, where does that expo fit in with like that whole timeline that you
Yeah.
were just on?
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite moments like of my life, I think, was that bridal expo because it like, we got such like a lifelong friendship out of that day, which is like so great. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I was freshly out of college and I was waitressing at the Philadelphia Cricket Club. Shout out Philly Cricket. And I was making no money. And I had photographed one wedding, the wedding that I just referenced, and a couple like friends and family. And then I had second shots, two weddings. And I had a little bit of content. And I remember like seeing an ad either online or somewhere that there was a Philadelphia Bridal Expo coming up. So I inquired and I said, how much is it to have a booth? And I'll never forget, it was $400.
Oh my God.
And yeah, that was a lot. That for me, that was a lot. And at the
Well,
time,
imagine like what it's got to be like at least more than double than that now.
oh, at
Yeah.
least, right. In this
Like,
economy, come on.
yeah.
So, so yeah, so I was like, screw it. I have like $500 in my account. I'm gonna drain 90% of it, and we're just gonna figure it out. Like, fake it till you make it. So I
So,
went to
so I'm gonna cut you off again. Knowing you, like that is a huge leap.
no, Michael, yes. It was the universe. It wasn't me. It was the universe saying, drain that bank account, do
Mm.
it. So I went to Staples and I printed out like life-size posters of like clients that weren't even mine that, I was second shooting for and, whatever. So I had like this table with like fake, sorry, my dog is barking in the background, with like fake rose petals. And I had like my pricing. And I had like, I think I had an iPad at the time and it was like a slideshow of images. And then I had a clipboard. So I remember potential brides or couples and their, friends or family like walking by and I would just talk to them. I'd be like, "Hey, I'm Caroline. What's up? Tell me about your wedding." And from day one, I always knew that human connection was so important, or at least I wanted that to be important, for my business. And people were like, "Wait, who is this 5'1" girl?" Like, okay. So people would write down their, name and email on my little clipboard. And I remember going home that night and just like, emailing everybody immediately saying, "Hey, it was so lovely to meet you. Here's my pricing," or whatever. But within that afternoon, you and Megan walked up to me and, just got information. I thought nothing of it. And then Megan ended up hiring me, which was so great for me. I was just so thrilled. I'm like, yes, like a stranger hiring me. This is sick. This is so great. I am crushing it. So I remember photographing that wedding. So sorry, Megan. Really didn't know what I was doing at the time. But again, fake it till you make it. And that was when you came up to me, Mike, in the middle of the reception. You're like, "Hey, I'm Mike. I'm also a photographer. Would love to connect. Like, if you ever, want to shoot together or, grab coffee or just like have a conversation about business or photo, like we should totally do it." And yeah, like that was such a pivotal moment for me. And then I think just in our, relationship of like, hell yeah, like let's shoot together for now over 10 years. Isn't that
So
crazy?
it is really crazy. It makes me feel really old. Um,
Really old.
but I like something I don't know if that I ever thought about was like so my perception of you when I first met you at that bridal expo, like talk about fake it till you make it. Like you were playing the part. Like you were like like you were playing the part of like someone who like you carried yourself in a way where like you just had this confidence of like I'm gonna or it, like if you weren't already doing it, like I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so like that was my perception of you in that moment. And then again, like seeing you like I think it was like a little over a year later at the wedding, again, like you were like carrying yourself in a way where like you were doing it, and I remember seeing the pictures and, my wife was like obviously like in that wedding and like the pictures were gorgeous. Like they were beautiful. I was like, wow, like this girl is, like legit. Not that I, like I was in any place to like critique anyone, but like, because even at that point, I don't think I might have shot like, I don't know, one or two of like my friends' weddings at that point. Um, but you were like really the first person to say like, yeah, like come shoot some weddings with me, come second shoot for me. And I remember the first couple weddings that we shot, and again, like I didn't know what I was doing either. So
It's fine.
sorry
Nobody
to those clients.
nobody does in the beginning, man. Come on.
Um,
And if they
but
say
like,
they are lying.
no, but like you were, like you were the one that kind of said like, yeah, let's do this. And like, I got my feet a little bit wet in the wedding industry, and um, like this was actually something else I wanted to ask you. So, did you feel like after shooting your first couple of weddings that like you knew it was something you wanted to do?
Yes. Yes. I think it was the adrenaline for me.
Mm,
And it was, as you know, like it's such an emotionally charged day. And then I also feel like being a wedding photographer for me, again, only speaking for myself.
sorry, hold on. Hey, bud, can you give me a little bit of time so I can?
No.
Yeah, but I gotta record with my friend here. Okay?
No.
Yeah. Yes. So after your first couple weddings, like it was something that you felt like you really wanted to get into, you really wanted to do.
Yes. So after my first few weddings, I made a ton of mistakes and so grateful for all of those mistakes. A lot of, so many, learning opportunities here and there. But I just really, two things that I loved about it. I loved that I could really let my personality shine as being a very like strong, direct woman. And that was received well, right? As you know, Mike, like on a wedding day, there are so many moving parts, so many people, families, vendors, so many things involved. And that people always need direction. And I felt like I was extremely comfortable doing that with ease. So I loved that aspect of it. But then also just learning about people and their stories and their family dynamics and just, really making them feel, loved and happy and bringing good energy. And I just remember driving home from, my first few weddings being like, damn, this was so cool. Like, how is this like my job? Like, it's just, there's no other job like it, truly. And I had no plan. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to put all of my eggs in one basket and give myself like a couple years and see if this works. And it did. And I've just kind of been rolling with it ever since, It's crazy.
So I it's funny because I remember. I don't know if it was the very first wedding I shot, but like it was the first wedding that I like really remember. It must have been the first wedding I shot, and I remember it was a lot. Like it was a destination wedding, so it was like a friend from high school, and he like flew me down to Savannah to like photograph his wedding, and I just remember like feeling so much pressure and like anxiety over it that like I'm kind of jealous of people who I talk to where they're like, yeah, like I did that wedding and I was like so pumped on the way home. Like for me it was like relief when it was over. Like, oh my god, like thank god this is over. And honestly, like as like the more I've done it, the you know that's gotten better, and I've been able to really like enjoy what we
Yeah,
do. Um, but
totally.
like it took a long time for me to kind of get over that hump of like anxiety or like the pressure that kind of comes with shooting a wedding, because it's not a small thing that we do.
No.
um it's not like the stakes are pretty high.
Mhm.
um and yeah, I just remember for especially those first few weddings in those first couple years, like just having that knot in my stomach. And like I said, I love to hear stories of people who like did it and they were like, hell yeah, like this is for me. Like for me it's been kind of a slow burn. Like it took me a long time to feel comfortable to like to be that person that you were talking about that's like in control. I feel like I have the answers.
Mhm.
So like yeah, I feel like that's really cool that you knew early on that like this was an environment that you could thrive in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I feel like we've had this conversation like literally at every wedding that we've worked, which is hundreds at this point. But it's so hard to differentiate like your business and yourself. Like they're two separate entities. But what we do, we're essentially selling ourselves, right? It's not the camera gear, the photos. No, it's about the person. And I feel like if you have like any ounce of like self-doubt, that will permeate through in your business. And I feel like, everybody struggles with that. I know. I feel like I struggle with it more now than when I first started, right? So
Mm.
back in, I don't know, over 10 years ago, like when Instagram and Facebook, or specifically Instagram, when that was born, there weren't a ton of photographers in the area. And now it's, after COVID, it's definitely like a little bit more saturated, in my opinion. So I feel like in recent years, like post COVID, it's been like a little bit of like self doubt, like creeping in. But then I have to like, regulate my emotion and be like, no, like you've been doing this for 10 years. You're overly consistent.
Mm.
You know what you're doing. And I also feel like, and I'm sure you can think of a wedding in your brain when I say this, but there's always one wedding that you compare every other wedding to.
Mm.
Like, okay, if I got through X, Y, and Z wedding, I can get through this. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So,
Yes.
yeah,
100%.
yeah,
100%. And it may not even be like one wedding. It's usually like specific parts of different weddings,
yes,
like, um, and it could be any number of things from like the weather to any number of things.
yeah.
But do you also feel like, that, um, the struggle that you have now might also be due to like your pricing, like pricing over the years?
No, I don't think so. I think I feel like I've been doing it long enough to know like, okay, this is like where my market is based on demand, and just kind of like how the economy is. I feel like I'm definitely confident in that. I don't know. I think it's just like as we get older, like when we're like, 22, 23, like we're way more fearless than being like an
Mm.
elder millennial now and like approaching 40. Like we're a little bit more conservative in things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just a combination of life and
Mm.
just so many
Well,
factors.
it's funny because we had a conversation recently where, you and I both kind of came up in around the same time, and we, kind of prescribed to a certain posing style and lighting style, that
Mhm.
at the time was like, very like trendy and there was a big market for it, and
Yeah.
not that there isn't a market for that now, but like the things in the wedding industry that are like starting to trend now, like the direct flash or like the grainy photos, like the really noisy photos, and that more just like kind of vibey like editorial look, like
Yeah.
those things were just not in demand
No.
when we were, like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like not that it was like judged, but like it, God forbid you had a crooked horizon line. Oh,
Hmm.
like that was
Yeah.
so bad. But now I feel like, it's definitely the wedding photography style is shifting. But I know just for myself, I want to be consistent while still growing as an artist, right? So if you book me now for your wedding in 18 to 24 months, I want that client to know, like, okay, their gallery is going to be consistent with the product that I produce. But I also feel like it's kind of cool that there's new trends evolving and the styles and just yeah, the styles are evolving. And I rather than resisting that, maybe lean into that a little bit more. And I feel like it's a little bit more inspiring now versus 10, 15 years ago. So it's pretty cool to see that evolution.
Yeah.
So for me, I try to keep my style somewhat consistent in like the classic, like what photo is grandma going to print and put on her mantle? Like I want to get those classic timeless images with like a little sprinkle of like edge and, editorial and flash and maybe a little crooked here and there. So,
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think the thing that really I found interesting about that conversation was just the shifting of the generations and like what, each generation kind of finds appealing, like,
yes.
um and it's funny to me. I honestly I think it's great. Like I kind of like you, like I'm incorporating a lot of that stuff into my workflow as well, and like making sure I carve out time during each portrait session to like experiment and play and like have fun.
Yeah.
But I think it's really funny and cool that like the things that we were trying to get away from, like keep it like I spent hours trying to make sure my horizons were straight, and like denoise, like turning the noise down, and like
Noise. Yes. That should
and
be the name
like
of this podcast, Mike. D-Noise. I'm kidding.
what did I say?
No, I said that should be the name of your
Oh,
podcast. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no. But like, and now, like that's what a lot of people are like posting and a lot of people are sharing and doing. And, there's like a small part of me that's like, there's that little voice in my head that's like, oh, like I used to spend hours like not doing that. And now here we are, like people want that. I just think it's really interesting how these trends cycle, around. They come, they go away, they come around, they go away, they come around. And it's like things kind of almost got to a point with like photography, like the cameras are so technically good. And now people are like, but wait, we kind of miss that like
Yeah.
film look,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
miss like that, like, we miss that like candid feel that we used to get from like a disposable camera,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
No, it's definitely interesting. And I feel like, especially Gen Z, again, just my opinion, I don't, I feel like they like messy, authentic, blurry, like that, yeah, like that disposable camera that, you have to, develop at CVS or Walgreens. Like that is the ideal style. Which is so fascinating because looking back, Mike, to like when we started, that could never be me. Like I looked at that like that is so not professional. Like everything needs to be crisp and centered or rule of thirds or whatever. And yeah, the styles have definitely changed, but it's interesting. I think it's important for seasoned photographers not to resist that,
Mm.
um, and just lean into it as much as you possibly can while still being true to yourself.
I like that. Seasoned. We're seasoned. We're not old. We're seasoned.
We're seasoned, Mike. Okay, I like that too. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. But I also think like it's important for like potential like couples or anybody that's engaged, like if that's the style that you like of like more documentary in the moment, you have to be like super self-aware, like is that really who we are,
Mm.
right? Because I feel like a lot of couples need direction. I know a lot of my clients, like they're always looking to me or whoever is kind of like in charge. Okay, hey, where do I look? Should we be smiling? Where do my hands go? Am I, things like that. So while that authentic, raw, messy is amazing, I feel like that can't be applied to every single couple, and that might be a little controversial, but would also love to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I think not controversial. I think there is a style for every couple. And, that's like one of the beautiful things about what we do is like, yeah, we're there to serve the client, but there's also like a little bit of personal taste that gets involved too, right? So, there are photographers who, across the board who have like wildly different styles, but are still going to approach the day in like a similar way as far as serving the client, you know? So, no, I think it's important for couples to think about, the fact that these photos are going to be, shared for the rest of their lives. If they're getting an album, they're going to have an album with these photos, like, hopefully it becomes an heirloom that they pass down to their children. I think it's important for them to think about like, what is our vibe? What is our style? Maybe it's light and airy, maybe it's not light and airy, maybe it's dark and moody, maybe it's not dark and moody. But I also think for a while it was like just those two, right? Like for a while it was like, are you light and airy or are you dark and moody? And now I feel like there's so much more gray area, I think, you would have probably described yourself as light and airy at one point, and like I probably would have described myself as light and airy at one point too. And then at a certain point, you know, I'll let you talk about your editing style, but I know for me, like my editing style has kind of shifted to where I feel like I'm more like my exposures are a little bit in the middle, you know, like not too bright, not too dark. You know, I definitely like am careful about blowing out the highlights, and like I want to see the shadows too. Um, and my color temperature generally skews on like the warmer side, which kind of like ties into, you know, I'm almost always shooting at the beach, and you know, shooting, you know, near the water, so it kind of like ties in with that.
Yeah.
But like I think what's cool now is there's like so many different flavors of like light and airy and dark and moody.
Oh, hell yeah. And I think that's just so cool. And I think that just shows like the evolution of, wedding photography, even over the past 5 years, right? And I feel like, you know, my style back in, 2012, 2013, 2014, very light, bright, and airy. And then, as things evolve, um, I feel like now I would consider myself true to life. I'm definitely not dark and moody. I think that is a very, very niche style that that's just not me. I'm not really drawn to that style, which is fine. And I feel like light and airy, I'm not drawn to that as much nowadays either. I'm definitely more so in the middle. I love color, but I also love a really great black and white. Like, there's
Mm.
nothing better than just like an editorial black and white image. Like, I love it. I love it so much. But me hearing that 10 years ago, I would be like, absolutely not. Everything is, not overexposed, but very, very light and bright. And now I'm like, I'm leaning a little bit more, true to life,
Yes.
less light and airy for sure.
And what I love about the black and whites, right? So like a lot of times, you know, so like when you're shooting, and I feel like this is something you do really, really well. Like from our, you know, like the way that we were kind of taught posing and like giving direction, right? It was very much very specific, right? Like do this with your head, do this with your hand, you know, stand this way, stand that way, da 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 da, which is good, which is very important. But I think what you and I have also learned over the years is like it's important to keep shooting through those moments, right? So like after you give the direction, after the moment happens, you get the photo, like don't put the camera down. Like keep your eye on the viewfinder, because like 9 times out of 10, like that's where you're going to find those really like beautiful candid
Yes.
moments, right? That like you
Yes.
can't plan for, that you can't pose for.
100%. I feel like I tend to, because obviously, we can make the decision of, okay, what photo do I want to make black and white versus color, or give your client the option of both. But for me, I'm really drawn to emotion-filled images and that are completely candid, and I am most likely quiet
Mm.
in the background. One specific image that I can think of. Shout out Rebecca and Jake at the Ryland Inn. A couple years ago, it was a photo of Rebecca's dad walking into the hotel room to see her for the first time.
Mm.
And it's just an image of him just like hands over his face, just bawling. And I remember it was myself and the videographer, David, shout out David, standing or sitting next to me, and we're all crying. Like, we're silent because we're just waiting for this moment to happen. And it's just, those are the moments that you cannot recreate even if you tried. Just
Mm.
the power of the emotion, right? So I feel like, with my work, I'm drawn to making those moments black and white, just to focus on the emotion and not so much the scenery, the setting. It's about the people. So again, that's kind of what I'm drawn to.
So like that's kind of a good segue into something else I wanted to ask you about. So what do you think is, or how important do you feel it your like psychology background or like your past experience has been in like helping you kind of read the room, right? Or like read the vibe, right? So like in that example of the first look with dad, which, you know, in that scenario was like super emotional.
Mhm.
You know, you just knew to shut up and like let the moment play out. Which like in that scenario it's like pretty obvious, right? But like what do you think about that? Like
Yeah.
using your intuitive uh,
Yeah.
power to read the room.
No, I love that question and thank you so much for asking it. Yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, conversation, I've unfortunately lost both of my parents when I was young, and it's just been like a lifelong journey. But through that, really difficult time, I feel like that has been such a tool for me to connect specifically with other women that have lost a parent or a loved one or are just going through an emotional time with a family member, on a wedding day. So for me, like whenever I see a moment with a dad or a mom, I have such a special place in my heart because unfortunately, I did not have that at my wedding, which, that's just how the cookie crumbles. And I just know the importance of that. And yeah, just the overall importance of what we do, right? On my phone, there's a folder of a couple photos that I have of my childhood and my father, and that's all I have is just like maybe a dozen. And that's like so sad and like depressing to think about, but I always tell potential couples like on a discovery call, like, hey, like what we do is really important. And you're basically like preserving your family history, which everybody needs to do. And actually, just the other night, I was at my in law's house and we spread out like hundreds of photos on their dining room table of my husband, Josh, and like his childhood and really embarrassing baby photos. And we were just telling stories. And I was holding up a photo like, oh, who was this or who was that? Or tell me this story. So I feel like that is such a gift that we can give people,
Mm.
is really capturing the history of your story. And yeah, I feel like when you've been through some stuff in life, it just really it allows you to read the room in a way that like I just can't explain.
Mm.
Like when I walk in, like I can kind of tell like, all right, like what's the vibe? And again, like I don't know if you have this sense, Mike, but I feel like this is why like you and I connect on our friendship of like, yeah, you just kind of know like when to step in and like when to like to shut up. Like, does that
Yeah.
make sense? Sorry if I'm rambling, but
No, it 100% does. And I think like that, sixth sense or that intuition, um, or that being able to read the room, whether it's from like past trauma or from like just a talent that you have is one of the things that like really can bring your wedding photography to the next level. Because it like at the end of the day, it is about delivering beautiful photos to your client, and but it's also about like putting yourself in the right position to take those photos and like kind of more than like reading the room, like reading the family dynamic and like reading who are like who are the friends that like that seem really important to this day, and
Mhm. Yeah.
and like putting yourself in a position to get those moments right. Like sometimes the first look with dad is super emotional, and that's great. Other times like it's not. I mean, it's not because there's any less love there. It's because sometimes those, I don't want to say contrived, but sometimes those moments that you like try to plan for, they don't elicit the same emotion, and like it'll come out later in a different way.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, like you
Yeah.
said, I think you mentioned when we talked the other day, when we had that conversation the other day, like you're really big on like the speeches, like you love the speeches.
Mike, okay. I'm a traditional photographer like 85% of the time. But like I said just like 5 seconds ago, like I love moments that you cannot recreate even if you tried. And I feel like people are their most true self when they don't know that a camera is on them. And when does that happen? During the speeches, because they're most likely focused on each other, on their partner, or on the person speaking. And I just love, like, I never drop my camera when the speeches are happening. It's always like my second photographer will be on the speaker and I'm on the couple. And if I'm looking for a hand grab, I'm looking for one of these, I'm looking for a laugh, like just the expressiveness. Like I love it. It's so real. Or if like, somebody's telling a really embarrassing story, like that's great content. Like that's so fun. And yeah, so that's definitely one of my new favorite. I mean, it's always been a favorite, but I love those images so much.
Yeah. So
Because Mike, at the end of the day, like you can be an incredible technical photographer. You could get all of the trendy editorial direct flash, like, oh my God, you're gonna go viral on TikTok, like Vogue, whatever. Like, but if you're not good with people, if you can't make people feel seen and supported, like that's what it's about, truly. And I feel like
yes.
that's how we've like been able to maintain longevity in our business is just treating people well. And then all you need is one client. All you
Hmm.
need is one client to really love on and really go like over the top on their wedding day. And then from there, that is how your business grows, right? So it's just, yeah, it's interesting.
So, all right. So how do you do that? Like, what are some things that you do to go above and beyond, or like what are some of the things that you do that have like made you be so consistent?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I feel like from the beginning, I specifically on social media, I try to show my personality because I want to attract and repel, right? I want to attract my ideal couple and repel people that I know it just wouldn't be a good match, and that's totally fine. So showing, my sense of humor, my family, showing who I am as a woman, before a business owner, I think really breaks down that level of trust and connection. I feel like connection is key.
Hmm.
And then just maintaining that level of communication leading up to the wedding day. So one thing I love to do is, send out like a questionnaire like prior to a wedding that my couple will complete. And from there, that lists like if there's any sensitive family dynamics, any like special requests, things of that nature. And then from there, like, we'll hop on a call and be like, hey, make sure you don't put Aunt Susie next to Grandma Betty. Like, just kind of like learning like the little ins and outs of the family. But how do people feel comfortable enough to relay that information? I don't know. Like, truly, Mike, I don't know, but I feel you just have to. I'm really rambling. Wow. Edit this out. Edit this
No,
out.
no, it's so no. I think like
What I'm trying to say.
what you're trying to say, or what I hear you saying, is people can sense like an authenticity with you, and they can sense that like I don't know, like I think as much as can read the room, with our like ideal clients, like they can kind of sense with us too that like we're the right fit.
Yeah.
And there's something that comes with our past experiences. Like my past experience is very different than yours,
Mhm.
but I still have experienced a lot of like anxiety, like depression. Had my own like mental health struggles. To the point where like I know what it feels like to like really struggle, right? And I know what it feels like to not really to feel like kind of lost and not really know like where you're going in life.
Right.
Um, and I think there's like a thing that happens to you when you kind of face that sort of turmoil in your life, whether it be due to external circumstances or internal circumstances or both, where like the pretense of a lot of superficial bullshit just kind of like falls away.
Hell yeah.
Where like you just kind of like can zero in on like what's really important and like what really matters. And I think like that is kind of and I'm going to go out on a limb here and like I know it's true for you, but I think it's also true for a lot of other creatives, that we've all kind of been through the ringer emotionally, and that's probably what's motivated us to get into like a creative field, right? Like we need some sort of outlet. And
Yes.
then, weddings just kind of become like a natural progression of that, in that, we get to be creative and we also get to create a living for ourselves too. Because there is like there's an economy for weddings, like there's an industry for weddings. So like, we kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, totally. And I feel like at the end of the day, like people, like there's different types of buyers, right? And I feel like there's such a psychology in that of like some people when they stumble upon your social media or your website, they're like, absolutely, who is this guy? Who is this girl? Whoever, like I want them. Or they're a little bit more, I don't know, like on the fence. But I feel like people can sniff out whether or not you're real and authentic, or if you're just, hey, here, pay my deposit and then that's it. See you on the wedding day.
Yeah.
Like, no, like, you have, it has to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Not every photographer does, and that's fine. But that again could never be me. Like, I want to hear all of your family tea. I want to know, what happened at the bachelorette. Did you drink too much in Miami? I am going to Venmo you $25. Like little things like that. Like, but that's who I am. Just like I'm like that with my friend, like my girlfriend's shout out Jeannie. She's in France right now. I Venmoed her, I'm like, have an Aperol spritz on me, babe. Like I do that with people, like everybody in my life.
Uh-huh.
But really,
Yes, every single wedding day that I shoot with you, I get, I get my Starbucks gift card every single morning.
100% have
Yeah.
your caffeinated beverage on me. But
Yes.
it's little things like that. Like that's who I am when I'm offline,
Mm,
right? So that who you are offline, I feel like needs to like transition to who you are in your business.
yeah.
And people will just get that. And that's just I
Yes.
feel like it's a smart business move too, because that really like sets you apart from, other people that are just worried about like a perfectly curated Instagram feed and things like that. So I
Yeah.
feel like people crave in the world of AI, people
Mm.
crave authenticity now. So now more than ever, send that Starbucks gift card, okay?
Yeah, don't hold back. People want the caffeine.
People want the caffeine.
But so to your point, like
Oh, I'm so
to
sorry.
your point, you know, I think authenticity can also have different definitions, right? Like, I think we seem authentic to our people, right? To the people that want to hire us, But then there are also people who are like, maybe they don't care so much about that, and they really care about like, a great client experience. They don't necessarily feel the need to like connect with their vendors in that way, and like that's fine, and they're like totally happy with that. Like I think there's for you and me, like I'll speak for myself. Like I definitely, I have a hard time with like superficial interactions. Like I don't want to talk about like, oh, like what is the weather, and that's just like my personality. Like and part of the reason I wanted to do this was like I want to talk about like real stuff. I want to talk about like things that are important to me, with people that I find really interesting, and with people that I've developed somewhat of a rapport with, and who knows, like down the line, maybe I'll start to bring on some people who I haven't met before, and that'll be interesting too. But like, just me, my personality, I want to surround myself with people who are like on the same wavelength as me, and who, and not just in terms of like clients, like obviously, again, in the forefront of my mind at every wedding, whether I'm, whether it's my booking, whether I'm lead shooting for another studio, or whether I'm second shooting, is, that client's experience, right? Like I always keep it in the forefront of my mind. Like I am here on one of the most important days of this person's life. So like, it is my job, my responsibility to like hold that in like a pretty high regard, Um, And at the same time, you know, one of the reasons I think you bring me along is because, you know, we can have fun too. Like it's okay to have fun.
Yes.
You know, like
Yeah.
let's like it's your wedding day, like let's laugh, you know, like let's be silly. Let's be ourselves, you know?
Yes, because and that's such a great point. And this is, why, I love working with you and I love you on like a personal level as well, is like people feed off of other people's energy, regardless if they're aware of it or not. So, like, if we are very stoic and stern and just very rigid, then people are going to stiffen up and they're going to feed off of that. But if we come in and we're like, all right, let's have fun, let's put on some music, let's put on some NSYNC and just kind of like vibe, like, hell yeah, like people are either going to laugh with us or laugh at us, either of which I am fine with because I want people, weddings are fun,
They are
period.
fun. There was
Fun.
one wedding recently where you pulled out, as you do, you pulled out the music for the bridal party portraits. You
Yep.
have your, your little like Bluetooth speaker bumping, and it was, what was it? Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten, right? And like right on cue, like as the chorus came on, the entire bridal party just started like belting out, like "Feel the rain on your skin." Like that was one of my favorite
Yeah.
moments ever. That was so good.
Yeah, you can't make it up. You can't
No,
make it up. So if the energy isn't there, not saying it wasn't because it was, like you have to create that environment where people can be silly and, be real and have fun. So that's like such a cool part of our job. Like
yes,
dancing to Natasha Bedingfield, are you kidding me? Who can say that? While they're on the clock, are you kidding?
right. And like the Gen Z people listening to this are like, "Who's Natasha Bedingfield?"
Oh, I know, I
Um,
can't. I have to, this is a side note. I think I have to go through my playlist
mm,
and like get rid of, I'm like, this is too millennial.
you gotta update it.
I gotta update it.
You gotta update it. You gotta throw some Sabrina Carpenter in there. You gotta throw
Yes,
some
Chapel
Billie
Roan.
Eilish in there. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. What am I gonna do? Another off-season project.
Yes, bridal party playlist. Okay, you gotta be you better bring the goods with your bridal party playlist
I
this
know.
year.
There's a lot of pressure I'm putting on myself, truly. I gotta get on TikTok. What's trending?
So like, all right, so you're, we're about the same age. You're a couple years younger than me, but like, um, have you noticed the generational gap like in your couples recently? Like, do
Um,
you think like where are people finding you? Are they still finding you on Instagram, or are they finding you on TikTok, or is it like a little bit of both?
I've had a couple, I want to say like maybe like 3 to 5 inquiries from TikTok. I'm
Mm,
like, I am such an influencer now. Like, this is so cool. No, I think I might not understand it yet, but I'm getting there.
mm,
I think there isn't so much like a generational gap. I just think that people really put emphasis on like different things nowadays versus, 10 years ago. I feel like it's less posed, more candid, more real
mm,
focus.
mm,
So really trying to kind of retrain my brain to shoot in a different way. Again, still staying true to my style, but what does my client want now? What does my 24 to 26-year-old client, what do they want? Go on their Instagram. What type of content are they consuming? And trying to lean into that slowly and kind of
mm.
transition into the new wave of clientele. But Mike, let me tell you, it's hard to keep up with the trend. Okay,
We're
it's
yeah. There's so
but it's
many yeah, so many Gen Z people are turning this podcast off right now because
it's fine. Goodbye. It's fine. No,
yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, so I've resisted TikTok for a very long time, and just recently I was like, all right, I gotta make an effort. I gotta make an effort. I gotta do something. And so far that's consisted of me just downloading the reels that I've made for Instagram and posting them to TikTok.
Literally same. Same.
But
It's
like, so for this year though, I'm actually really excited because I have some like really cool engagement shoots coming up. I have some like some weddings that I'm like really excited about this year. And I'm making it a point to bring like an assistant or a content creator on like every single one. So
Yes.
like get ready for the bomb content.
Hell
I don't know
yeah.
if that's what anyone says, but like get
Nobody says that, Mike.
nobody says that. Get
Nobody
re-
says that in their 20s.
um no, but like I'm pumped. Like I'm excited because like I just I had some really awesome weddings last year that I like booked for myself, and I'm me, like I mostly associate shoot or like second shoot for other people. But I had some like really great weddings last year, and for a lot of them, like I didn't have any content for, like I didn't have anything to like make reels out of, and I was like, man, like this could have been really really cool, but I just dropped the ball.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting though? Like that's a thought that we have now. Like, oh man, like this would have been a great content moment
Yeah,
versus just being in the moment, right?
yeah,
But I feel like it's two things, right? It's that's horrible, but also that's what sells. That is the way of marketing yourself, right?
yeah.
And I downloaded TikTok, oh my gosh, in 2020. Don't judge me. I think Josh and I made like horrible like couples content. It has since been deleted. Don't try to find it. So embarrassing. But it's a way to like be completely unfiltered and show who you really are. I feel like Instagram is still heavily curated.
Mm.
So like for this year, I feel like I definitely want to like lean into like, oh, a day in the life of a wedding photographer and just be myself and
Yeah,
secretly want to get one of those like little like furry mics and
do
just
it.
like how funny would that be? I'm
No,
still
but
workshopping it.
I think there's a middle ground that you can strike there, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, I, I think that's maybe like the importance of bringing a content creator or, an assistant, whatever you want to call it. Like this way you can be in the moment, right? Like this way, you can be present because you don't have to worry about like, oh, I should be pulling out my phone to get like the behind the scenes, because if
Yes.
I'm like, if I'm in the middle of shooting and thinking in the back of my head, you know, I should be taking some behind the scenes of this, like then I'm not present, then I'm not with my client. So,
Right.
I think that is really, it's actually kind of serves two purposes, right? It like gives you that content, but it also kind of frees you from like having to worry about getting the content.
100%. And also, I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And I hired a content creator for a couple weddings last year, and then she's also coming with me for several more weddings this year. And I'm so
Hmm.
excited. And it was hands down the best investment I ever made
Yes,
because
we're melting. We're melting, right?
literally kill me. Oh my God, cringe. No, but that's who I am. And you know how many people message me saying, I feel like I know you already and I've
Mm,
never met you. So, like, here's my credit card. I mean, that's incredible.
right.
But it's also like, I don't want to think about making content on a wedding day. That's not appropriate, in
Mm,
my opinion, right?
mm,
The wedding should be about the couple, it should never be about me,
mm,
period. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is I just want to pay somebody who like knows what they're doing in
mm.
terms of what's trending, how to edit, how to make me look cool, and just somebody like young and fun. Don't
Yes,
laugh at
we're
me.
melting. We're melting.
Like yes.
So
Like
cool.
but you remembered that, Mike, and
I
that's
did. It's
I
burned
consider
into my
that a win.
brain.
I consider that a win. You can laugh all you want. But yeah, like I think it's such a great business opportunity for young people to be like, hey, I know what's up. I know what's going to go viral on TikTok. I don't even need to go viral, but just like
Yeah.
what's trending, audio, editing styles, things like that, which is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really smart.
Yeah. 100%. Um, I'm really excited to have, someone come along with me on these shoots and get some of that stuff. Because yeah, like as much as I do feel like there's an importance to consistency on your Instagram feed,
Hmm.
because I think like clients are looking for that. Like clients want to see maybe not like a perfectly curated feed, but I think people want to see consistency, whether it's like consistency in the editing or consistency in a vibe or like an emotion.
Yeah, totally.
So, you know, like I think that's important for Instagram. And again, I don't fully understand TikTok yet, but I think there's like an authenticity that happens on TikTok that maybe doesn't happen on Instagram. I don't know. Again, like these are thoughts of an elder millennial. But
But it's the truth. As a fellow elder millennial, I agree with you. But
yes.
it's important to like you got to keep in the know. Like you got to know what are these young kids into nowadays? Oh God.
Wow, we're really leaning
Edit
into
that
this.
out.
We're old.
Edit that out.
So you like to travel.
Yeah, I do.
So you just got back from like a weekend in Mexico, huh?
Yeah, because when you don't have children, why not? No, my husband Josh and I we've been together we've been married for almost 8 years and together for I think 15 at this point. But we had a destination wedding. We got married in Mexico, which was so cool and so fun. I love destination weddings. But yeah, that's something that we really value like in our marriage is traveling and getting out of our daily routine and just seeing the world. You know, the world is a big place.
Hmm.
So
So you've been
yeah,
to Iceland a couple times. You actually shot a wedding
I
in
did.
Iceland.
Yeah, that was really cool. That was
What was
really
that
cool.
like?
Definitely one of the highlights of my career. Just having somebody that put full faith and trust in me to fly me to another country and just kind of like let me do my thing was really freaking cool, and I will always be grateful to her. Yeah, and yeah, so I've been there, and then I fell in love with the country. So then Josh and I went in 2021, and we both, fell in love with it together. Just the energy, the vibe. It's an incredible country. Yeah, so we like to bop around. Yeah.
Nice. Um, so what do you think that you would do more traveling in the future? Like more wedding, like more destination weddings in the future?
Oh yeah, I would love that. I think yeah, if the opportunity presents itself by the universe, absolutely.
Hmm.
I think just as an artist, photographing a couple in a venue or an area or a city that I've never been to or I'm like completely unfamiliar with is so inspiring.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I think definitely if the opportunity presents itself, for sure, sign me up.
So interesting. So I find these like when I have to leave the beach and go, like to a city or to, something like a little bit more urban. Um, Sometimes it is a little bit of like I don't want to say struggle, but like the way you look at light in nature is different than the way you look at light in a city, right?
Mhm.
So like, on the beach for the most part, I'm typically looking to backlight the subject, right? Like keep the sun behind them so that, the faces are like properly exposed. I'm contending with like wind direction and like, all that kind of stuff, which can be challenging, but like I'm familiar with it, right? Like I know what that challenge looks like. In the city or in like an urban environment, you know, there's so many more like shadows and like colors and
Mhm.
textures and like it's a completely different energy, right? So you have like people, cars, like bikes riding by. Um like do you have a favorite or do you think like you prefer like you like or do you like it all?
Great question. So I have a couple things. So as you were talking about like the difference between like city and beach, and like you feel like, oh my gosh, like this is like unfamiliar when you come to the city. I feel like in terms of like sunset and like glowy light, it's so different in the way that you approach it shooting in, let's say, Philadelphia or New York versus the city or
Mm,
versus the beach. Um, like you lose light so much faster in the city in an urban
mm,
environment just due to the surroundings and buildings versus at the beach. So yeah, you have to learn how to adapt. um, and then actually like an example of like not second guessing myself, but there was a moment where I was like, I don't know if I can do this like physically. I
mm,
shot a wedding out in Aspen, Colorado last January,
uh-huh.
and it was like really cool. It was a very small elopement. It was so beautiful, like really, really like emotionally charged, gorgeous. Definitely another highlight, of my job so far. But just the altitude. Thank goodness my husband Josh and I, or Josh came with me, and we took the gondola all the way up to the top of Aspen Mountain, and I had my Apple Watch on, and it was like alerting me like, "Oh, your heart rate is a little too high. What's going on?" And I got out of the little gondola after having a panic attack because it was a clear globe. And I'm like, I don't like heights, but this is fine. So we were going, it was 11,000 feet above sea level. It was insane. Gorgeous. It didn't even look real, but I was like, how am I going to photograph this? Like, it was insane. But anyway, it was just your body has to get acclimated, and it was fine. But yeah, I think as long as you do like as much preparation as possible, if you're going to be like in a new environment, whether it be in the mountains, in the city, at the beach, don't just wing it. Don't assume, oh, I'll figure it out when I get there. Some people can work that way. As a type A personality, I cannot. So if I'm shooting a destination wedding, or if I'm in a new environment or at a new venue, I want to get there as early as possible to scope everything out. What are the variables? What is the lighting situation? In the city, is there construction? Are there weird smells? Or, is there, something spilled? You never know, Mike and Philly, come on. Is this a stinky block or is this not? Like, oh my God, this episode is so chaotic. But this is who we are, folks. Yeah, I think, you have to prepare. Whereas at the Ryland Inn, like we've shot there probably 20 to 50 times. Like we could shoot at the Ryland Inn with our eyes closed, which is great in terms of consistency. Like we know where to go. And the staff is great there. Shout out Ryland Inn. But yeah, if you're in a new place, scope it out as much as you can.
Yeah, I definitely take a page out of your playbook, when it comes to that sort of thing. There's definitely, it's two things, right? Like there's definitely a confidence that comes when you've shot as many weddings. When you shoot a lot of weddings, like you just kind of become a little bit more confident in yourself in terms of being able to deal with different lighting scenarios and different variables, right? But, to your point, like I do think it's important if you haven't like shot at a venue, at least to get there early and kind of like scope, or it could be even something as simple as like a lot of times if I'm going somewhere where I haven't been before, and maybe I'm not going to have time to get there early, like I'm going to scope it out on Google Maps and like look at, what the grounds look at like where the sun is going to be, right? Like kind of like estimate like what the angle of the sun is going to be like. And, just kind of prepare in my mind, like, this is where I think I'm going to want to do like first look, or this is where I think I'm going to want to do like family portraits or bridal party or whatever. That said though, like I had a wedding back in October where it was at a venue I was super familiar with. It was like, I was not concerned about that piece of it at all. And I had like already prepped the bride and the groom as to like where I thought we were going to do first look. And I showed up, and that location was like indirect sun, horrible like diagonal shadows, like going like right across where I thought I was going to want to be. And I was like, nope, no bueno, switch gears, and wound up doing it in not a completely different place, but like in a place that was like right adjacent to that, which wound up being beautiful. And it was actually a spot that I had used with like another photographer, like a few weeks prior to that, where I normally didn't shoot at that venue. You know what I mean? So like, I think there's also something to be said for, seeing other people's work at a lot of the same places that you shoot, and like getting inspired by that too, because like, at the end of the day, we're artists, right? And we're all going to see light a little bit differently. We're going to see settings a little bit differently. And, I think like as much as I want to like stay in my own lane and like honor my own like creativity and like honor my own like style, I think it's also important to like see what my peers are doing. Do you hear that in the background?
I do. It's amazing.
to see like what my peers are doing in some of those same venues.
No,
Does that make sense?
100%. No, it does make sense. And I also feel like that, scenario that you just described is the level of service that you provide to your clients and that all photographers should be able to do. It's the ability to make decisions quickly and confidently because, your couple is investing a lot of money in you for trust, period, right? So if you're like moseying around like, oh no, this first look spot has trash lighting, where am I going to go? No, like you have to be so confident and okay, this isn't going to work. We're actually going to move over here. And this is a better, lighting location because, so and so, I was inspired by their work or this was amazing or I've seen this before. But yeah, I think taking inspiration from other artists is amazing and so helpful. But also having that confidence in yourself to make important, crucial decisions quickly and confidently. And we make thousands of decisions every wedding, and just not questioning because if you're questioning your decision, people will pick up on that energy.
Yeah.
So fake it till you make it. That is the
Yes.
theme of our first podcast, Mike.
Even if you're not confident, you gotta just pretend like you are.
Yeah, 100%.
So again, like not to beat a dead horse, but when you've seen as many scenarios go down as we have, like I think what starts to happen is at a certain point your like photographic technical ability kind of like plateaus, and because there's only so many things you can do within like the framework of a wedding day, right? Like there's definitely like constraints on the day, like creatively. But like what starts to get better is your decision making. Like what starts to get better is like, okay, I've seen this scenario play out, or like I've seen the lighting here do what it normally does, and so rather than like waste time at this location where I know I'm not going to get like a great outcome, like I'm going to focus my time at this other spot because I know like the light's going to be great there. I'm not going to have to like worry about like the wind and this sort of thing. Like I know it's protected from the wind. Like I think those are the things that start to get better is like like you just said, like keying in on making confident decisions that like impact the flow of the day.
Oh yeah. No, 100%. And I feel like that only comes with time, right?
Yeah.
And it's also just a small personal story here, but I remember like the first couple weddings I shot, even like the first like 2 years of me starting out, I remember like looking at my work being like, I feel like I'm not like nailing it. Like what I'm just like not super happy with my work. And why is that? It's because I wasn't I wasn't communicating what I needed and I wasn't being direct enough to the couple, the families, the bridal party. I just needed to be stronger. I was like I was shy and like, oh, nobody look at me. And now I'm like, listen, people. So you have to, through that experience of like, okay, if you're not getting what you want, maybe make like little tweaks here and there, but just having that confidence in yourself of like, no, like I need to like take charge of this situation. I am the expert. I know what good lighting is. I know what good composition is. And just making people trust you in those decision-making skills is so important.
Yeah. Or just fake it till you make it.
Or just fake it till you make it. And that's what I've been doing for 12 years, Mike. I'm kidding. If any of my clients are listening, I'm kidding. Or am I?
So, and I'll admit, like, I feel like it hasn't really been until recently where I've really felt like, 100% confident in my decision making, and like I don't think you can really ever be 100% just like confident in your decision making all the time. Like you're constantly just trying to like do the best you can again within like the constraints of the day, and like I think it's normal, and I think it's actually kind of healthy to like second guess yourself a little bit, to think like, hey, could I have done this better? But I know for me, like one of the things that I really struggle with is like fixating, like I will have done 99 things out of 100 right on a wedding day, and I'll fixate on like the one thing, that like maybe I didn't capture that great, or like, maybe I should have put them in maybe should have put the bridal party in like different lighting, or maybe it was like one thing that I think I may have missed. Like, again, I will have created like an amazing gallery, but I'll still, particularly like on the way home from the wedding, like sometimes it's very rare where I like leave a day and I'm like, I just nailed that from start to finish. My brain,
Same.
my brain almost always goes to, this is what you fucked up, and this is what you fucked
But Mike, I feel like I'm cutting you off because I feel like that's so relatable. And that's just being a human. Like you could act as confident as ever, but you're always going to have self-doubt. I mean, every wedding that we work together, Mike, I'm always like, did we get enough portraits? Are they mad at me? Like it's true. Like, yeah, it's part of the human experience. Everybody always doubts themselves, but at the end of the day, like your clients are always happy and that's all that matters, you know?
Yeah, and what's even funnier about that is like 99 times out of 100, um, the thing that I thought I screwed up turns out I didn't. Like I'll get it back on my computer and I'll be like, oh,
Right.
yeah, that's
Right.
good. Or like
Right.
oh, I didn't miss that. Or like, oh, my second shooter got that. Like
Right.
because I like told them like, oh, hey, make sure you get this. you
Right. No,
know?
but not to be, a pseudo fake therapist. I feel like that's like, we all have
You
that like
have
little,
you have a psychology degree.
I
You're
do.
yes.
Right. Haven't used it in quite some
Yes.
time. Just kidding. I use it every weekend. But everybody has that voice in their head that isn't themselves. It's
yes.
somebody else. It's
Yes.
somebody else. And then you need to figure out who that person, someone, something is in your brain that's telling you you're not good enough, they hate you, right? Not to get super deep, but
No, but
everybody
like you're right. It's
struggles.
I think what I've learned over the years are like coping mechanisms and strategies that have kind of like lowered the volume on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I know for me, like, and this is, I'm not saying this is right for anybody else, but like for me, like what I'll do is I'll get home, I'll like decompress a little bit. Next morning I'll wake up, I'll import all the images, and I'll get the preview done. I'll send out the preview, and honestly, like most times, I'm like, yeah, this preview is like really really good. And I send that off, um, and then I'll like take some space from it for a few days. Like I won't revisit it for like a couple days to just kind of like give it a little bit of breathing room, give myself a little bit of time to like decompress from the day, because I'm like attaching my
Mhm.
stuff, onto the day, right? And like I don't want to do that energetically. Like I want to be removed, emotionally removed from like what I was thinking and feeling in the moment, right? Because like what I was thinking and feeling in the moment may have because I might have been feeding into like some sort of anxiety or some sort of like it's the timeline. Sometimes things work beautifully and like it feels like you have lots of time and things run smoothly, but like other times it doesn't and it feels very tight and you may only have like a certain amount of time to get a wide variety for the gallery, right? So like it's hard for me sometimes. It's like hard to separate that feeling from the images, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, totally. And I love what you said, Mike, about separating yourself. I feel like I can relate to that so much because I feel like we have very similar personalities where if we're around people with intense energy or scenarios that have intense energy, like we feel that and we carry that for quite some time after that scenario has passed. So yeah, like for me, like my after wedding routine, like I drive home in silence. That's creepy, right? But I'm just like high energy, like all day. Like I need to just chill
Mhm.
and just like regulate like my inner self. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
no,
just like,
100%.
focus on like deep breaths, whatever, and then upload everything, get the preview out, and then, post on social media. And then we're turning the phone over. I'm spending time with my family, usually on a Sunday. Sundays I don't work. or I try to. That's a boundary that I'm trying to implement, but we'll see. We're now switching over to personal time, right? Like we're spending time with family, friends, rotting on the couch, whatever it may be, to completely separate yourself from the energy that you just put yourself in for the past however many hours. I think that's really important.
Yes. And I think it's also important to like help ground us too. Um, like for sure my relationship with Kim and my wife Kim and our kids, like when I get home and whether they're awake or sleeping, but like I see them and whatever like I was obsessing on, the thing that like I thought was important but isn't really important, like I see them, or I get to spend time with them the next day, like it just puts those fears, like those irrational fears and anxieties, like into perspective.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think like it's really important for us to like lean on those relationships and like just remember like your relationship with your husband is like super important, my relationship with my wife and like and my kids is like at the end of the day, I'm serving my clients and I'm doing it because I love it and I'm passionate about it, but like I'm also doing it because I want to create like a really beautiful life for my family, and like we get to take that joy that we create, in terms of what we do, like when we're there, like hopefully we are a source of like fun and energy and like peace for our clients. Um, we get to like take that same like joy and energy home to our families and like
Mhm.
give that to them too, right? Because like if I was working like a 9 to 5 job, on top of like having to manage all the other responsibilities of like home life, like it'd be a much different story. Like we're very blessed in what we get to do, and the fact that like we're making a living doing something that we love and that we're passionate about.
Yeah, hell yeah. And I think it's the flexibility over everything, truly. And especially, for you, your journey to have a family, your 3 kiddos and your wife, like it's so important to always put that first. And I feel like you do such a great job of that. And it's like it's really easy to fall into the trap of like I just want to like hustle, hustle, hustle. I want to make as much money as possible. The next wedding, the next one, and obsessing over that. And then that's when burnout hits.
Mm.
And I feel like 2021, 2022, that was me. I was like,
Mm.
it was like an addiction of like, I need to work as much as I can. Like, I love this. And family was second,
Yeah,
admittedly. And,
but there was
that's
also like some factors there at play that you didn't have control over.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was definitely, going through, another difficult time. And I wanted to put all of my energy towards something that I could control versus focusing on, you know, things that I couldn't.
Mm.
And yeah. And I feel like, burnout is real and it stinks, but I feel like you need to kind of like hit that almost to realize what's really important. And
Mm.
then also if you've experienced, any type of loss in life, like what's truly important in life. So, um, weddings are great. I love it, but at the end of the day, like it is a job, a really cool job that I love, and it's you get to meet some incredible people, and you get to give them such a gift, and just make them feel loved and seen on a very emotional day, which is really cool. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, so like that kind of ties back into your why, right? Like making people feel seen, right? Having that experience of like not having a lot of photos of you, as a young kid with your family. Like this is a redundant or a kind of a redundant question, not a redundant question, but like kind of a stupid question. Like that definitely ties. Do you think that ties into your motivation for shooting weddings?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I feel like, for me, on my own wedding, it was a very emotional day. And yeah, just, like I said, not too long ago, having one folder on my phone of like maybe a dozen photos of my father and, me as a baby. Like I don't have really any content or any proof of my life prior to age 15.
Mm.
And that's just, again, just, how the universe, dealt the hand for me. And yeah, it stinks. Like it really stinks, but it is what it is. So I feel like I really understand a little bit more than the average person of the importance of photographs. Like, some of the photos I have are like photos of photos of photos. Like they're crap quality, but I don't care. It's about preserving that person or that memory or that milestone in life. Like that is so important, right? Like whenever something good happens or, somebody passes or whatever, the first thing you do is where are the pictures? We need to look through these pictures. And yeah, so that's why like what we do is so important. It's so important.
Yeah. Um, so I want to end this on like a little bit of a happy note. um,
Yes,
like
all been happy, Mike.
yes, no, this has been a really really cool, and this is like why I wanted to do this because we've had the opportunity to talk at weddings and but like a lot of times we're kind of stealing like 10 minutes here 10 minutes there to like catch up on life and it's rare that we get to talk at length about our lives about processing what it's like being in the field that we're in and I think it's really important for us to do that and I think hopefully maybe this conversation will resonate with other people and help other maybe younger photographers or be validating for people who've been doing it for a while and yeah so I guess my last kind of question for you is like what's next for CMP like what do you see over the next like 5 years or so?
Yeah, great question. I've been asking myself that question quite often recently, and I feel like you've known me for a long time, Mike. I love control. I'm very type A. I love to be organized. I love to know what is coming next. I love to be prepared. And I feel like I'm really leaning into the season of the universe will show me when she is ready. So I just want to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way that makes me feel good, that makes me feel like I am in alignment with happiness, with peace. And yeah, I know that's like a really open-ended answer, but I feel like me 10 years ago would have been like, well, I need to make this amount of money. I need to work at this venue. I don't really care about that anymore. I just want to be happy with every decision that I make. I want to put my marriage first in every decision, lean into friendships more, have more space to live. And then through that space, that will then permeate through my business and really like lean into the creative aspect of that as well. So yeah, I know that's like a hippy dippy answer, but you get what I'm saying.
Oh, you're such a hippie.
I am.
Yep.
No, not at all.
Well, no, I mean, I'm don't know if I'm ready to get into all this in the first episode, but my,
Three hours
my weirdness will come out eventually.
in. It will.
We've talked about some pretty deep and heavy stuff, so maybe there'll be a Caroline Morris episode 2 at some point, and we can get like really esoteric.
I would love that. Please ask me back anytime. I'm always willing to chat. Maybe we can also have like an episode 3 and 4 and 5 and so on about like TikTok trends, how to not be a cringy millennial. I
No,
think that would be fun.
I think we should lean into the cringe. I think we should do like a whole episode just sounding like we don't know what we're talking about.
Sounding like we don't know what we're talking about. We should do like a brutal portfolio review of circa 2012. Absolutely not. I would die.
Oh, that would be.
No. No.
Come on, we could get permission from our past clients. It would be fine.
It would be fine. That would be great content. And then
No, you know what we could do? We could like I'll break out some of my like past, nature photos where I thought I was being like super artsy, and like we can just kind of break down how terrible they are.
Oh, hell yeah. I used to dance. So I have like a bunch of, like, when I was like a teenager. So I have a bunch of like really cool and artsy, like ballet photos, like similar to your beach stuff, like surfing stuff. So yeah, we'll do that side by side.
Yes, I love that. I can't wait. Oh my God. I'll talk to you next week. No.
Perfect.
Caroline, thank you for being my guinea pig. I appreciate you coming on here and chatting with me. I can't wait to share this with everyone. I hope you had a good time. And yeah, I love you. I can't wait to see you soon. And we're going to crush it in 2025.
Hell yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. This was truly like such an honor to be, a guest on your incredible podcast. You're going to crush it. You're always so easy to talk to. And I'm so thankful for your friendship, over a decade. And, we're going to know each other until we're like 95. So
Oh, God.
it's going to be
And we'll
great.
still be trying to shoot weddings.
In our walkers. Yeah, this is great. With
That
our
would be an amazing gimmick.
That's
The
really
wa-
funny. But we have to have a content creator, Mike. So a content filming us in our walkers and our disposable cameras. I can see it now. Oh my
Oh my
God.
God. I can't wait.
On that note.
All right, Caroline.
All right.
I will talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.